I just wanted to see you.
Okay. Hello.
Okay. So Donna figured it out. Yes, I updated the course calendar, so I did want to go through that with you. I'm trying to give you and maximize as much time possible for this last paper, and to, not rush the one that you're currently doing. So let's just look at that one. All right. So we are currently in week 8. Here's my little thingy here. Okay. So we are currently in week 8. What I did was I pushed things back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We had enough room at the end of the course. I always build in extra just in case there is a snow day. So, I was able to push things back. If things are back a little bit later than I would want, because there's really no wiggle room at the end then. So when it comes down to the final paper, it's got to be done on that date, or, you won't get credit.
Okay.
So the actual critical response paper, and we're going to go over, oh, someone's here, hold on. So it looks like Zoom is acting up. There we go. So it kicks you out and then brings you in. Hi, Majika. Oh, she did her hair today. She looks all pretty. Okay, so Majika, we're just going over the calendar because I made some changes to it and want to make sure that everybody sees that. So the actual essay, the critical response essay that you're working on, is due in a week. All right, this gives you one whole week to kind of get it together. It also gives me time, since the planners are due today, I can actually look at the planners and return them by Wednesday, so you have feedback on it. And then you have plenty of time on Wednesday to get help if you need it from me, and Thursday or Friday to get help, okay? It can certainly help you during class on an individual basis, or on an individual basis in the classroom or in my office hours. So
I have a question.
Yes.
Is for the final planner due, is that part 1 and 2?
Yes.
For today?
Yes.
Where can I find this calendar right here? This calendar that we're looking at.
Okay, hold on. I got it all worked out here. So on D2L.
Yeah.
Where it says weekly course calendar.
Oh, it's under Zoom class. Okay, under Zoom class.
So
Gotcha.
it has its own tab, weekly course calendar, and then you just click on that and open it up.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So let me go back. There we go. This is working out better. I figured out a little trick, but I lost the little pointer. Okay, so again, if you have, I'm gonna cover the requirements again today and go over the guidelines. It really is pretty much the same as your last paper, and I did return all of the papers to you, so you should have, if you've turned it in, you should have gotten it back. If you didn't turn it in, again, really try to work on getting these things into me so that I can, return them and you can move on. All right. What did I just do? Oh, you can't see it. All right. So that means on today, we're not going to do a lot. I do want to talk about the guidelines for the critical response essay one more time. I do want to cover chapter 6, section 1 today. So you have a little bit of buffer. that you don't have a whole lot to do. If you didn't get the planner done so that I can, give you feedback, preferably by Wednesday. Right now I have English 102, not papers, but planners to look at too. So that's taken priority because I got to return those today by noon. So, all right. So looking forward, let's go to the end, and I'll show you how I kind of pushed everything up. So 4/29 is really the last day. It's the last Wednesday, and it's the last day to submit work, okay? So if you owe me anything, 4/29 is it, because 5/2 is the end of the semester, and I gotta get things graded and turned around within just several days. So I ask that you please, get everything in that you owe me, or kind of stick to the schedule that we have here. The retake for the quiz is also due then. So that's like the final day of the course. So if you haven't taken the quiz or quiz number 2 and you fail it, you have all the way up until like the last day of class to complete the quiz. All right. So now we're going to go really backwards here. Week 11, session A. It's really nothing because you would have already been working on the rough draft. So I can help you if you need help on that day, but I'm not really planning on doing much that day. That originally was this, and I moved what you see under B, that was A, and I moved it back 1 for you so that you don't, so that you have enough time. Again, it's probably not good for me, but hopefully it's good for you, and it's more important, I think, that you're happy, not that I'm happy. Okay. Well, not really, Sierra, but it is kind of important. All right, week 10. So the Wednesday of week 10, which is the date of 4/22, I'm going to meet with everybody. I'll have like a little sign-up sheet. It'll only take about 15 minutes, but I'm going to go over your paper with you. So this one, you really do have to have a rough draft done so I can work with you one-on-one and talk about your paper and say what you need to, beef it up and to fix. So that's the Wednesday. So that way you have a whole week. After we've talked about it, after I told you what to do to fix it, you have a whole week to get it done. You can turn it in sooner, that's certainly fine, but you have a week from that point to get it done. So that means on 4/20, that's the Monday, I need to have your rough draft of the paper. All right, that gives me Monday and Tuesday to read your rough drafts and give you some thorough feedback so that on Wednesday I can talk with you about it, okay? The rough draft is worth points, but if you don't have it done, I can't really give you feedback. Most of you here are pretty good about that, so really kind of keep that in mind. So you really have 2 weeks from here to week 10 to work on this next paper, which we're going to kind of talk about on Wednesday, during Wednesday's class. It's not much different. So each paper adds a different element, okay? So the response paper was just you and the text. The summary response. The critical response adds an extra text to support what you say or to support the author. The final paper is a little bit more involved and looks at a couple other things, but it also brings in a supplementary source. Okay, so the papers do build upon one another and they do have more requirements to them, but if you've gotten it so far, you will get it in the last paper too. Okay. So next week, again, the critical response is due, and then you'll be kind of working on your rough drafts for this next paper and the planner. So that's about as far as I can stretch things out for you. I can't really can't go any further than that. Does anybody have any questions? Amber, you came in late. Do you have any questions?
I'm just guessing that next week our critical essays due, and you were just talking about what was it? The critical analyst is going to be due on week 10. And what, that's 2 weeks from now?
The critical analysis, the rough draft is in week 10. The final is due on the last day of class of week 11.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Remember, there are kids in the room listening.
Huh?
There are kids in the room listening, so be careful with what you say.
All right, I just woke up, so I'm not all here.
Okay. All right, anybody else have any questions about the schedule? Thumbs up if you think this will help you. Well, okay, 2 people are happy. All right, good. So that being said, now that we have a little bit more time, I do want to review the requirements for this next paper with you. So where is that? That is this one. Okay, I have to go that way. All right. So again, critical response is the same thing, more or less, that you just did. You're reacting to a text, and you're going to look at some elements of the text. The only difference is you're actually supporting it with, let's see here. Yeah. So you're just supporting it with the supplementary source. Okay, that's really the only difference between the last paper and this paper. It's a little bit longer. You're using another source, but the setup is still the same. So make sure you look at the feedback I gave you on the last papers. But the feedback or the structure is you talk about the author. What did the author say? Have a topic sentence, and then go in a little bit further to your reaction. So it's author, you, and that's how you should be kind of going throughout the whole paper. Author, then you, because it is a response paper. So you have to have the author first before you can actually respond. So you're doing the same thing. You are summarizing. That's in the first paragraph. You are talking about your personal opinion and experience. Make sure you use first person. Make sure you talk about your personal experience. Like, that's really very important that you bring in what you feel. Okay. I think there was like one person that didn't really talk a lot about their own personal experience with buying experiences and not things. Specific references to the text, in other words, citations. Now let's just kind of review what I mean by citations. Anytime you say the author claims that, and you talk about the author's ideas, after that you have to have a citation. So you have to have the parentheses, and you need at least 2 pieces of information. You need the author's name, last name, comma, and you need the year. Okay? Why do you need to do that? Because I need to know that is the author's ideas, that's not you. If you don't cite it, then it sounds like it's your own idea. All right? So, look at the feedback on the last paper. A couple people were leaving out citations, and I said, oh, you need a citation here, and you need a citation here. If you don't cite it, then it's plagiarism. And I know it's unintentional. Nobody here is trying to plagiarize on purpose, but remember, you only need paragraph number or page number if it's a direct quote. So if you use quotation marks, then you need page or paragraph number. If you don't use quotation marks, you don't need that. Let me stop here and ask for some clarifying questions if anybody has some questions.
What do you mean if you use quotation marks? You mean in the specific quote, if you use the quotes, you don't need a paragraph or a page number?
Direct quote.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct. So direct quotes. So let me see if I can do this here. Yeah, I can. All right. So probably need to put a color that you can see. Oh, geez. 1 minute. White. There we go. All right. So I am tired, said Pooh. I don't know if he said that. I'm just making this up, but I'm using that because Amber is tired. Okay. So it looks like, I don't know.
Oh,
So
I sure am.
in this case, it's a direct quote. So what do I mean by direct quotes? We see the quotation mark here. We're taking the words right out of the text. We're not changing them. We're using exactly what the author says. So in that instance, you need to have your parentheses. You have to have the author's last name, and I forget who wrote it. Let's just say Smith. And it was 1950. All right, so that's what it would look like. That's what your citation would look like if it's a direct quote.
Okay.
Right? If it's not a direct quote, if you're simply, let's take this. Oh, shit. All right. So rather than say, I'm tired, said Pooh, all right, I'm going to paraphrase it and say, Pooh claimed that he did not get enough sleep and he was feeling sluggish. That's probably the same thing as saying he's tired, right? But this is my words. Well, it's still not my idea. I didn't write Winnie the Pooh. So you still have to give credit to the person whose idea it was. So in this case, because it's not a direct quote, we just need the author's last name and we need the year. All right. That's the only difference between direct quotes and indirect quotes. It's easiest if you do not use direct quotes. Because
Okay.
the articles that we have don't have page numbers, which means you actually have to go and count all the paragraphs, and you don't necessarily want to do that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right, so let's get that out. It's forever there now. It's not actually on the PowerPoint, but it's on my screen. Okay. Specific use references. Okay, so yes, you do need a reference page. I think there was one paper that didn't have a reference page. You want to have the reference page. Of course, that Pooh is going to be there on every slide now. All right. So what are we looking at here? What are the things that we want to look at when we're analyzing the text? Well, obviously, we need to know the author, the title, the date, and the source, because that comes where in the paper?
Okay.
The beginning, in the first paragraph, right? Like more or less the first sentence. well, the second sentence, you want to have an attention getter, and then you can have your, sentence that has this. The thesis of the text, or the main idea, you need to know, because that kind of couples with the first two, with these two items here in your first or second sentence. You do want to mention purpose. So on the last paper, I noticed there were some people that didn't talk about audience and didn't talk about purpose. Okay. And so on the rubric, it said something, the rubric is answers all of the questions in the prompt. So two of the questions were audience and purpose. So if you didn't mention that, you lost points on the rubric for that, right? So it is a good idea to, after you mention these first two items, move to, the author is writing for a general audience of adults who like to, or to younger people who like to buy things. For the purpose of persuading them not to be materialistic or something to that effect, right? So you can combine it. If you look at the sample papers, you'll see how they do it in that first paragraph. It's all in the first paragraph. You only need to mention it once, check, done. Mention the audience once, check, done. You don't have to do it throughout the paper, just make sure you mention it somewhere. Obviously, the key supporting points become the ideas of the paper. So what are the ideas that you're going to talk about in the paper? All right, here's the difference. Here's where we have a little bit of a difference between the last paper and this one. Oh, change. There we go. These two things here, you didn't have to have in the summary response. All right. So you should have talked about audience. You should have talked about purpose and all this other stuff. But in this paper, you need to make sure you address author's worldview, bias, and assumptions. I really don't care about the assumptions part too much, but I do care about worldview and bias. What is the author's worldview and what is the author's bias? And what is your own worldview and your own bias? Now, how would that have looked in the last paper? We talked, some of you really did mention worldview in the last paper, which I thought you did a great job at. That author really believes that he doesn't believe materialistic things are important. Now, you can agree with that or you can disagree with that. So your own worldview would have been, and materialistic things aren't important for me too. I think it's more important to be happy. Okay?
Okay.
So that's the progression of this paper. It's like the last one, except you have 1, an extra source, and 2, you're going to talk about worldview and bias, both of the author and your own. Questions? Oh, good. All right.
No, one question.
Yes.
Is that in the first paragraph too?
Is it what?
Is the worldview and bias in the first paragraph as well? Or is that anywhere?
That can go anywhere, really. So if, let's say you're talking about a point, a specific point, it might lend itself when you're talking about that particular point to talk about the author's worldview and yours.
Okay.
So I would probably, and I would put the stuff at the top, I would put in the opening paragraph, the worldview and yours and the author, I would build in the paper somewhere.
Okay.
Just make sure you do it, put it in there so that we can, again, check you've answered all of the questions. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, just mention it. Anybody else have any other questions? Oh, I knew it. Damn it. Let me do this. That should get rid of it. Ha, good. All right. All right, so again, it's the same as the last paper. You are talking about points that you agree with and points that you disagree with. That hasn't changed. You know, can you apply it to your own life? Bring in your own life experiences here. It really is important. Don't keep it generic because it is your reaction, okay? So I need to see the word I in here. Now, you only really need to talk about first person when you're doing the reaction piece. It doesn't need to mean when you're talking about the author. Well, I think that the author believes that. Don't use those. Just say the author believes that. I, on the other hand, feel that. Then you can, you know, kind of talk about your experiences. Okay. All right. So we all kind of looked at. These are just some examples of sources you could use, but I've already looked at your sources and approved them, so you're all good in terms of that. All right. Remember, your thesis, at the end of your first paragraph, your thesis will either agree, disagree, or be a combination of both. It should focus on the content. Okay, what is it about what the author said that you agree and disagree with? And make sure your thesis is specific. In other words, list the 3 or 4 items that you are agreeing with and disagreeing with. Have that so-called preview statement for me. I'll make a note. What I will do for next class is find a good example of a preview statement from this paper and share that with you. Preview statement thesis. Okay. All right, the rest is just, you know, how to organize it. I don't want to spend the time going through all that, but here's a nice little checklist, okay? And you know, that's probably a good thing to use. It's more or less the mechanics of it. It's not really about the ideas, but the mechanics. Do you have enough supporting details? That's probably one that's specific. So that PowerPoint is on D2L. If you're really good, print off that last slide, you know, and print it off in grayscale so that you're not using color. And then you have a checklist. Are there any questions at this point? Okay. Then I do want to do 2 other things before we go on to chapter 6. I did want to review the guidelines one more time with you. We already have, I'm not even going to talk about this because we already did that. We have the secondary source, all right? But here is the kind of important things that you want to keep in mind. So it's 825 words is the minimum to 1375. When you get to the minimum, that means that you might not have enough detail. Like I really wouldn't shoot for just 825 words. because then you're probably not giving me enough details. So try to go a little bit beyond that. Paraphrase as much as possible. If you absolutely cannot paraphrase, or that the author says something so incredible that you have to use his words, then you can use direct quotes. But there really shouldn't be any more than 2 in the entire paper. And if you're going to have a direct quote, let's do this color here. You're going to have a direct quote, make sure it's no more than 3 lines. So don't take a huge, gigantic direct quote and go, well, I'm going to like fill the paper up with that. So it does count in the word count, of course. But when you take a big, long quote, you're taking away from your own ideas. So remember, critical thinking, one of the things is, can you paraphrase it or not? So you're showing me more skill if you can actually take what the author says and put it in your own words. Okay.
Any restrictions on paraphrasing?
What?
Is there any restrictions on paraphrasing? Like, we're only allowed to have 2 direct quotes.
No, there's not a restriction on paraphrasing. On average, we usually say like three quotes, either direct or paraphrasing per page. So you don't want to have paraphrase in one sentence with you. Remember, it's a reaction.
Yeah, no, I was more asking if, like, in a paragraph, if it so happened that like 2 points from a paragraph per se were credible for one of the details you were using in your paragraph, could you paraphrase 2 ideas in the same paragraph?
Yes, you could.
Okay.
As long as you give adequate explanation, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So your paragraph isn't going to be just like them. It's going to be you interspersed. So yeah, certainly you can do that.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Okay. Ugh. I wish my girl was here today, but she's not. No you in this paper, please. Right? So first and third person, but not second person. You, the word you, should not be anywhere in here. The only place you could possibly have it is in the attention getter. But no you otherwise. Some of you had a couple yous slip through. You want to be careful about that. All right, again, make sure you do these things. Purpose, audience, main idea, your life experiences, author's worldview and biases, your worldview and biases. Right? So if you don't print off the other thing as a checklist, it's on the guidelines too. Just make sure you cover everything. If you look at the rubric, it's also part of the rubric. Augie, go over there. Yeah. All right. So yeah, good. So we got that one. So just again to kind of go over worldview, so that's a little bit not foggy for you. This is the PowerPoint for chapter 5. I did open it up so you have it now. It's I think under week 6 or 7, critical thinking. So remember, worldview is a collection of beliefs and values about life. It's one's outlook on life. And it's a perspective or framework that helps us interpret the world. So how you see, it's how you view the world, because this is your worldview. And when you look out the window and you see things happening, it's either going to conflict with your worldview or it might go along with your worldview. Worldview impacts lots of things. It impacts human nature, life and death, equality, responsibilities and relationships, and ethical considerations. Right? So it really is a very broad thing, right and wrong, equality or inequality. So where does our worldview come from? Well, we're shaped by many different things. Our worldview, gender, how a man views the world might be different, is definitely different than how a woman views the world. And there's, there is a little bit, there is inequality in how, in pay and just in life itself. We do have a sort of a male-dominated society. Race also affects worldview. I can't tell what it's like to be black, all right, because I'm not. I'm smart, I can read and know things about it, but I personally can't experience it. So how I view inequality might be different. When I go into a restaurant and go places, I don't feel people are looking at me differently, at least here. When I was in Germany, it was a different story. I lived in Germany and I was a foreigner. And so that was a whole different kind of experience for me, which was really good because it gave me a chance to kind of experience what it's like to be different. Nationality, regions, and religion, people talk about Jehovah's Witness. That's not your run-of-the-mill, regular, average religion. Some people kind of view that differently and don't view that as, view those people differently. Age, obviously, age and generation, generational gaps, they're there for a reason. My worldview is different than someone who's probably a teenager. Profession, sexual preference, all of these shape who we are. All of these shape how we view the world. Okay, so this last one is a good slide here. So how is bias and how is worldview related? So we said everyone has a worldview. That's good, but it can cause problems, all right? When worldviews clash, then there are problems. Worldviews are simplistic and cannot account for the complexity of the world. Like, some people view things black and white. You're either right or wrong, Other people believe in, like we've heard that little thing, a little white lie. Oh, well, yes, I'm an honest person. Well, that's not quite that bad. That's just a little tiny fib, and that's okay to do. It's okay to cheat a little on your taxes. I could take a few deductions and say I'm donating to Goodwill. That's okay to do. But it's not okay to, cheat on a test. We take our worldview for granted and we think it's normal. So how we view the world is what we think is normal. And when people view things a little bit differently, then, that's where we go, huh. Never realized people would actually think that way. So sometimes we think other people's worldviews are weird. Like, really, how can they think that? Like, that's crazy. There's the vaccination, to vaccinate and to not vaccinate. There's you know, this whole culture out there that don't believe in vaccinations. And then there's, you know, I believe that it's important to vaccinate. All right. So I don't quite understand when people go, no, I don't want to vaccinate my kid. You know, I don't understand that one. I think that's a little weird. So we make assumptions based on our real view, and this can lead to bias. And bias is an unfair judgment or an unreasonable point of view. Well, that's absolutely stupid and crazy if some person thinks that they shouldn't vaccinate their kid. That was my worldview. I think that we all should be vaccinated, right? And now the bias comes in. It's like, you don't want to vaccinate your kid? Well, stay away from me. You're nuts. That's the unfairness. Calling a person nuts because that's the way they believe isn't necessarily a fair thing to do. What's even worse, if you decide not to even listen to the other side, then you're taking the bias one step further. So remember, bias is a noun, it's a thing. You have to say the author has a bias. Please do not say the author is not biased. Every author is biased. Every author. Because they have a reason for writing. Even if it's to kind of show both sides, ultimately, there's a reason why they're doing it. Ultimately, they probably want to persuade you to believe one side more than the other. Okay. Talked about that. Let me see. So those are those things. All right. So I just wanted to go through worldview and bias because you do want to talk about that in your paper. So if you're not clear, what I would do is kind of look at it again. You have time now on the planners. If you write about worldview and bias on the planners, then I can kind of tell you if you're right or wrong. Any questions at this point? Now, one thing that wasn't on in the instructions, but you can certainly talk about it. So if you're like, oh, I don't think I have enough, bring in language. Was there any loaded language? Okay. Language you definitely have to talk about in the last paper, so you might as well talk about it now. You know, talk about the loaded language. Remember, loaded language is language used to persuade without using evidence. So what I would like to do is, if you have your textbook, bless you.
Thank you.
See, if you were in the classroom, we'd be going, oh, God, ew, God, go away.
Yep.
You have coronavirus. But here's perfectly fine. That's why we're social distanced. Although it looks like my screen's a little dirty. It might have gotten on there. I don't know.
Hey, ha, ha, ha. I turned my head into my elbow.
Okay.
I practiced CDC rules.
Okay. So in the old textbook, it's on page 161. I don't know in the new textbook, but it's exercise 5-7.
5-7.
5-7. It's on loaded language.
Is this in chapter 5?
Yes. Hence 5-7.
Oh, ha, ha. On page 169.
Thank you. So 161 in the old, 169 in the new.
That's loaded language.
Oh, I don't know if does anybody ever plan on going to use the computer lab at school? No, okay, then I don't need to explain it. There's all sorts of rules now to get in the building, so.
You have to get tested, like screened now.
Not well, yes. They ask you, do you know your temperature?
They ask you.
They ask you. They don't take your temperature. They ask you.
Oh, well, that'll work.
Normal.
I know. We've already we discussed this last week at our faculty senate. Like, what good does that do? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I know my temperature, 98.6. Okay. All right, so there's 5 questions here. In each one, you need to kind of identify the loaded language. And then we'll kind of look at what is the overall bias of the person who is making that statement. So I'll give you a minute.
Kills me. Are you smoking or jumping? So ambiguous double speak.
Ron, did you make it in?
Huh?
I was wondering if Sharonda's in. Yeah, she's there. No microphone though. Ready? So in question number 1, there she is. Now she can hear me. What's the loaded language in number 1?
Bums,
All right, so we got bums,
lazy,
lazy, and
Homeless?
homeless. So bums, lazy, and homeless. So if we put all those 3 together, what's the attitude of the person who's using these words? What's their bias?
Or like they already formed an opinion that
Shonda, could you say that again? I didn't hear it.
it's discriminatory.
Okay, yes. So they're taking a very negative view on homeless people, and they're kind of saying that you're homeless for 2 reasons. You're a bum and you're lazy. And that's not really necessary. That is some people's attitudes, unfortunately. That's not everybody's attitude. So,
And it's not necessarily true. some people are, I think, are homeless because of circumstances, not necessarily.
Absolutely. So, but you see, some people, that's their worldview and that's their bias, you know, and the bias comes out in the language. Okay. And you can build in the bias through loaded language. So that person really does believe, oh, you're homeless because you're lazy and you're not working. That's the reason why you're homeless. And, you know, most of us don't think that way, but that person does. Okay.
Are you writing in a different color?
I am.
Blue
It
and
looks
pink.
really. Oh, okay. There we go. The way my
Yeah,
screen
blue.
hard to read.
Oh, should I change it back to blue?
No. It was just the way my screen was. I just tilted it. Boom, I can see better.
All right. So number 2, every doctor knows how to treat his patients. Believe it or not.
Treat
Every,
Every,
like
very good.
every.
is that is.
So what's the person, what do you think the person's career is that said that?
A doctor.
Maybe a doctor. Maybe a doctor. So they're obviously very biased towards the medical profession. If they're not a doctor, they know maybe their husband or wife is a doctor, depending on that. All right. And we all know that it's not every doctor. There are, unfortunately, some out there that don't know how to treat their patients. Okay. But this person truly believes doctors walk on water and doctors can do everything and anything for patients. All right, number 3, excuse me. One word you might not know what it means.
Is this zealotry?
Zealotry, correct.
Bounds.
So zealotry is like overexcitedness. And obviously no bounds is no limits.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they're saying that animal activists are what?
Reckless.
Not necessarily reckless.
Persistent.
Extremely passionate.
Okay, I like extremely passionate. I'm gonna say, because I was gonna say extremists. Correct. A little bit too much is what this person is thinking. If you want to see some examples, look at anything from PETA.
Yeah. Well,
You know, they are quite extreme.
yeah.
All right, number 4, corrupt politicians want to raise taxes on honest, hardworking Americans.
Corrupt.
Corrupt.
Corrupt,
Hardworking.
and then we have hardworking
Yep.
and honest. What's this person's bias?
Politicians are crooks.
Yeah, they hate politicians. And it's only the common man. It's only like the simple people that are honest and hardworking. In other words, politicians are not. That's probably a lot of people might actually think that. But not every American is hardworking and honest.
This is true.
Not every politician is greedy and corrupt. Well, most. Some aren't. All right. Lastly, greedy corporations simply want to make a quick buck.
Greedy.
Quick buck.
Quick buck.
Correct. So a quick buck implies they'll do anything just to make some money as quickly as possible. And greedy obviously is quite negative. So how do they view big corporations? They're against it. If that were a politician, what would they be trying to do in terms of laws?
Are we talking about 4?
Number 5. So if number 5 believes in greedy corporations only wanting to make a quick buck, and you were a politician and you believe this, what would you be trying to do in terms of laws?
Raise taxes on corporations.
There you go. Raise taxes on corporations because you think they're greedy, they make too much money, and they need to be controlled. Very good. Obviously, if you don't believe that, then you would be trying to give the businesses, a break, tax credits, etc.
And that never happens.
No, not in the United States.
Never.
We treat everybody fairly and equally here in the United States, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can hope and wait and dream.
I know. There is that hope and dream. Okay.
Oh my God.
All right. So worldview bias was chapter 5. Loaded language is chapter 5. So you might find some good examples of loaded language that you could actually bring in the paper. All right. So this gives me a little bit of time. That's good. We're good. I want to go over some of the concepts of chapter 6. We'll see how far we get. And as I said, we changed the schedule, so I pushed things back. So we're good with time.
A question. You were saying maybe we can find good examples of it in the paper. Does that mean we should be including some in our writing?
I would, just to make sure you have enough to talk about.
Okay.
Is it required? No.
Okay.
But it's sort of the difference between, like the average paper might not address it, but if you kind of go above average and address it, never
You
hurts.
also said it'd be good practice because we're going to put it in our next paper.
Absolutely. It is a requirement in the next paper, so, try it now.
Okay.
Okay. So let's look at the last thing here. There we go. Perfect. So the chapter 6 talks about analysis, and that's really what we're doing in this paper a little bit, and we're definitely doing it in the last paper. So that's why I want to kind of bring it in now so that you have the basis for before I actually introduce the next paper. So the first thing they talk about in the chapter that you really should know is the definition of analysis. And analysis means it's the process of breaking something into pieces and examining how those pieces function alone and together. And I'll give you a very practical example. You're driving on the road, all of a sudden your car stops and you get to the side of the road. Well, you call AAA and they can deal with it themselves, or you call somebody, who knows a little bit about cars. If Kevin Jones were attending, he could be helping us here. And they're going to run through a couple things. Well, do you have enough gas? How's your battery? Do you have lights? Okay. Do you have enough oil? What's the water? So they're going to kind of look at all of these little individual pieces. So the big problem is the engine stopped, but they got to figure out why. So they're going to have to look at all of these little things first, because something is wrong somewhere that ultimately affects how the whole engine is running. You take it into the shop, they hook it up to the computers do the diagnostic, and they do all the tests, and they can kind of find it that way. On the side of the road, you can't do that. Right? On the side of the road, you got to start going, well, I have lights, so I have a horn, so I got power, so the battery is okay. You know, I have gas, you know, and you kind of go through that and kind of figure it out. So breaking something down into its pieces. So when we're talking about a text, what are the pieces of a text that we're going to look at?
Bias, the loaded language.
Okay, good. Language is one piece of the text. If you want to take a whole text and break it down to the very simplest part, the simplest part of a text is a word. You know, just like the atom is the smallest element in a molecule, the word is the smallest element in a text. Loaded language is something we can look at. Author's purpose is something that we can look at. Audience, who's the audience? That's something we can look at. Worldview. That's a little bit more difficult because that's more or less an inference. You have to kind of understand the concept of worldview in order to get it, but we can also look at worldview. We also look at the points that the author makes. We're going to look at the author's arguments. Does the author make valid points? If it's the argument, because I said so, that's not a valid point. So when you argue with your kids again and you get mad and they ask you why, and you say, because I said so, that's a terrible argument.
Works though.
It's effective for kids, I know, but,
Yeah.
but it's not an argument, because we're going to go over now what makes an argument. Okay, so here we go. So arguments are made up of 2, if not 3 things. You always need these things to be what we call an argument. You always need a claim and you need proof. You need evidence. So you need to go to bed early. Why? Because I said so. Because I said so is not evidence. You need to go to bed early because you're always really super tired when you stay up past 10 o'clock. And then you're in a terrible mood and you're cranky. That would be evidence versus because I said so. And ultimately, you want to then end with some kind of conclusion. But any argument definitely has to have a claim and it has to have proof. Those 2 things are very important. No, this is not on D2L. These are my things that I use, but it's taken right from the text. So if you have read the chapter, it'll be on the text. Good question. So what is a claim? A claim is an argument. It's an assertion. Colleges should be free for everybody. That's my claim. staying home and not going outside will help alleviate the spread of, or stop the spread of this disease, this virus. That's a claim. There are some things called extraordinary claims, and you can never use an extraordinary claim in your argument. So what is an extraordinary claim? The extraordinary claim involves the supernatural, the boogeyman. Bigfoot.
Don't eat all your vegetable. Bigfoot.
Bigfoot is an example of supernatural. Does it sound too good to be true? That's an extraordinary claim. Take this one pill. You don't have to do any exercise. You don't have to change the way you eat. If you take this pill, you will lose 30 pounds in the next 5 weeks. You know, people are always advertising stuff like this.
And people are always falling for it.
Yeah.
And people still will.
Look, I've been a victim.
You get the phone calls, right? Oh, sign up for, we're going to give you a free cruise. Yeah, well, there's always a catch on those things. Does the claim have far-reaching consequences to daily life? Is it like the one pill that will cure everything? Or is the claim meant to manipulate or scare you? If you don't take this, then, you're going to suffer. So, critical thinking and skepticism again. First, stop and think. Is it too good to be true? Does it involve the boogeyman? Is it going to solve the problems of the world? Is it meant to scare me? If so, that's an extraordinary claim, and you can't use that in your arguments. There is an exercise in the book. I don't want to go over it, but there is an exercise in the book if you, at some point, want to kind of look at those. They're on page 180. It's 6.6-1, right? But I don't want to take the time here because we have about 10 minutes, yeah. All right, so just vocabulary. So if you're talking about a claim and proof, another word for proof is evidence or premise. When we go to chapter 7, we're going to talk about premise. Premise is a claim. So premise, proof, or evidence, all of those are the same thing. What can't you use as this? You can never use, for proof, you can never use questions. You can never use commands, because I said so. And you can never use exclamations. So why? That can't serve as evidence. Questions can never serve as evidence. Why not? That's a terrible, that's not evidence. That's a question. You can't use that. Go to bed early. Why? Well, why not? Because I said so is a command. So there's some cue words that we can look at. If you're looking for the reasons, if you're looking for proof, you're going to look for because, for example, in addition, moreover, namely, since, and the reason. All of those show you that you've used proof. And we'll see in a minute. I'm going to go over an example of this. Okay, so let's just do a simple, really simple activity. Let me go back to, so remember, an argument has to have claim and it has to have proof. And probably draws a conclusion, but you would need claim and proof. So if you look on page 184 of the old textbook, it's exercise 6-3.
Oh shit, I opened right to it.
You have the new book?
Yes, it's 194.
Okay, thanks. So 184 in the old, 194 in the new. So there are 10 statements. You just have to decide, is it an argument or is it not an argument? In other words, you're looking for a claim and you're looking for some kind of evidence. And you can go back to the cue words. You want to work together or by yourselves?
Together. Why don't we do it together?
Yeah, that's fine.
Small group?
What are we looking at again?
Page 184.
6-3.
Yeah, 6-3, page 184 or 194.
All right, just double checking.
Let's do this. All right, so I'm gonna send you into small groups. Okay, good. All right, you're all in the groups now. All right, so I'm going to pause the.
I thought it was argument though, yeah, because of it's between one of the words, but I don't know what you guys think.
Well, it's
Yeah.
definitely an argument. This is kind of like the politician thing.
Oh, were there?
Which number are you on?
Oh,
4.
sugar. No, we're on 5.
Well,
Yeah,
we're
well-
going to 5. Did we agree on 4?
Would you?
Yes, it was an argument.
Did, yeah, okay.
That's correct. It is.
We
Yeah.
just didn't agree on the word. Well, we didn't come up with it.
Oh, and the what with the word?
Yeah,
The signal word?
Yeah.
I think simply.
No.
No, expensive?
Nope.
Is it so?
Yes.
Interesting.
So you shouldn't support it. So is the signal word for the reason. Yes.
Gotcha.
Good. All right. I'm going to leave.
Okay, you should get your children vaccinated because, do I need?
It's a question. He's asking, well, have you ever considered studying abroad? And then
Gives his
gives his
experience.
like studying, yeah, and then gives his his point.
Got you. So you're right. So which one was that?
So you're saying number 3 is not an argument?
Thinking.
Yeah, because
That's correct. It's not an argument, and your reasoning was right. It's a question.
Okay.
Good.
Yay.
Good job.
What'd you say for number 1 and 2?
No, not an argument.
Which one?
Yeah, both.
Oh, no. Remember we'd said one, it could be an argument. We were kind of unsure about number 1. I thought that it was an
Yeah.
argument, but then we weren't sure because he wasn't arguing. He was just saying like, well, since you study really hard.
Okay. So
You
what?
provided-
Break it down. So remember, an argument has to have 2 parts, right? It has to have a claim and evidence. So what's the claim?
It's an argument.
That you should pass.
Yes, the claim is you should pass.
It's
And
an
then-
argument.
Why? What's
So it
the
is an
proof?
argument.
Because you studied.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it is an argument.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I'm really nailing this stuff, huh?
And
Well,
number
then
2,
5
you
would be
said
an
is
argument
not-
too.
Number 2, you said is not an argument?
Not.
You're correct. Good.
Okay. And then number 4 is an argument.
Correct.
Okay.
You're on a roll.
And then so is 5. It's an argument.
Yeah, that's an argument. 5.
Agreed.
You think?
Number 5, you
It says because.
stated.
Ah, yes, it does have the signal word. Very good. Very good. Can't trick you. Well, I can, but
I'm the only one that's back.
no, everyone's coming back.
Mm. Jeez.
How far did you get?
We did all but 10.
Okay. Man, Amber, you need go to bed early.
I do homework and stuff.
No.
I don't get done work till 11 o'clock at night. And then I don't get home till 12 after picking my son up. And then it's homework time. Hello?
Sharon is on the phone.
Is everybody back?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so some of you, we went over them. So number 1 was an argument.
Mhm.
Number 2 is not an argument.
Right.
Number 3 was not an argument. And what was the reason for that?
It's a question.
It was just
Because it's a question and you can't
Yeah.
use it. So number 4, what would be the claim?
So,
The healthcare system will simply make health more expensive. So you shouldn't support it. National healthcare system.
So
Yeah.
what's the claim?
That healthcare systems
The
will
claim is that
make
you shouldn't support
healthcare
it.
more expensive.
No.
You shouldn't support it.
Yes.
Yeah, that you shouldn't.
You shouldn't support a national healthcare system.
Right.
That's the claim.
You're
And
right.
what's the evidence?
Because
that
they're
they're making
simply
it
more
more
expensive.
It'll make it more expensive. So this is an argument, okay?
Wow.
Because it has both claim and evidence. Number 5, argument or not?
Yes.
Argument,
Correct. All right. Number 6, argument or not?
not.
Not.
Not an argument. Very good. Good. Number 7,
Not.
Not an argument.
what about the rest of you? Not an argument?
It's
Not.
I say it's not an argument.
This is an argument.
Yeah, because therefore.
Can you help us with
It's the therefore.
You're right.
So the claim is exercising keeps you healthy. No, the claim is you should exercise regularly.
Yeah.
Why? Because it'll keep you healthy. So it is an argument.
Oh
but
my
Oh, okay.
God.
Was that one of the ones
You
you were
did
going
that.
back and forth on?
No, ours was the next one.
Oh, okay.
So many people have gotten rich by coming up with a product that fulfills a need that many people have. What's the claim?
The claim is many people have gotten rich.
Yeah.
Many people have gotten rich by coming up with a product that fulfills the need. It's that whole thing is the claim. So what's the evidence?
I have none.
There's none.
There's no evidence.
There's no evidence.
So
This is
you
not-
were
This is
right.
not an argument.
So we were right.
No, you were right. I was wrong.
Number 9, argument or not?
Yes.
And
I'm sorry, number 9?
Uh,
this is an argument.
that's
no?
an argument.
No, it's not. The question.
You're telling me that I shouldn't smoke?
So what?
So what? I've heard how bad smoking is for you. That's not an argument.
Everyone has.
Not that one.
Everyone has to die sometime. That's like the dumbest reason ever. And number 10 is way too long to read. Is that an argument or not?
Argument.
It is. Okay,
It is an argument. Yeah.
good. So that's really from chapter 6 so far. That's what I need you to understand is just to know the difference between argument and not argument. We are good in terms of timing right now. So Sharana, you missed in the beginning. I did update the calendar, talked about that.
Okay.
One other thing I will show you on D2L so that you know that I did it, just so later you're not surprised. So all of the recordings I have moved
I saw that.
over here. Okay, now you can still get it from the announcements page. And why did I do it that way? I can now then see who's actually watching it. I couldn't tell from the announcements. I can't tell, like all the people that aren't here in class, I can't tell if they're actually watching it or not. Now I can do this. By putting it over here, I can keep track of who's watching it and who's not. So it is kind of important for me at the end of the semester to justify a grade and say, well, yeah, but you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. So you can still get it through the announcements. That hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed, it will take you to that page, which then allows me then to see it. And then I've embedded the video right there. You don't have to go to an outside source. It's right here for you.
Oh, hi, Mr. Cook.
Yeah. All right. So I just wanted to kind of go over that. So there's nothing due next class. The papers actually due the following Monday, next Monday. If you haven't turned in your planners, please make sure I get the planners so I can return those to you by Wednesday.
Which should have been submitted where?
So we have a whole week.
You have a whole week for the paper. Which would it submit? Okay, let me show you. Here.
I sent you a message because I was like,
Yeah, I know you did, and I already
For the
wrote.
planner?
I already wrote you back.
yeah, it's running late this morning. So we should.
I think it's week 8.
Right, I went there, but what did I?
It's
There it is. Week 8. Critical. No. So it's not.
See, I submitted.
Oh, it's the same as the last one. I don't have an extra link for it, so it's under week 7 where it says part 1.
Part one.
You can just
Oh, okay.
upload it again.
Okay, so I submitted it twice. I submitted it under the critical analysis, and then I went back and submitted it under the planner.
Okay, I'll take it out of the critical analysis. It's not a big deal.
Okay. All right.
But you put it on there, right? Because I can delete it.
Yeah, because it's already on the part 1. I just went back and did a second submission under part 1.
Okay, no problem.
Right.
Okay, so what's due on Monday is the rough draft for the essay?
Final copy of the critical response paper.
Oh, the final.
Yes.
When can we turn in a rough?
If you're going to do a rough draft, I really should have it before the weekend.
Oh,
Okay.
well, okay. So the final
That way I'm not like bogged down over the weekend.
critical.
we want to. You don't want a rough draft.
I don't need it. That's up to
like
you. If you want to turn one in and let me see it, then you probably just have to email it to me because I don't have a link for that.
Okay.
Okay.
If you have it on Wednesday, I can look at it during class time as well. But I mean, that's kind of pushing it, I know. But
Okay.
all right. Any questions? Are good?
Good.
Good.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.